Everybody. Today I have just a short video to tell you about what domain and range are. And so as a reminder, when we're thinking about functions, I kind of want this machine, this picture from Dr. Seuss's The Sneetches to come to mind. And in this particular image, there are Sneetches without that are going in, and then there are Sneetches with stars that are coming out. Well, domain and range are two words related to functions that mean what's the inputs, what are the types of things that a function takes as input, and what are the types of things that a function gives out as output. And so the domain in this machine is Sneetches without, and the range is Sneetches with stars. Um, it might also be helpful to think instead of as inputs as outputs, but to think about things as terms of x's and y's. So the domain, if you're asked that, is asking for the x's that a function has, and the range is thinking about the y's that it has. So let's look at a few examples. In this question, here is a picture of a function's inputs and outputs. As a quick reminder, each of these little points is one input-output pair. And so this point right here has an input, an x-coordinate of 5, and an output of 7, or a y-coordinate of 7. And the questions that you'll see today are what is the domain, or what is the range of a function that's given to you? So if they ask you for the domain, what they need is all the x-coordinates that you can see graphed. And so this point has an x of -2, this has an x of -1, looks like this is an x of 1, this is 5, and this has an x of 6. And so the domain is simply all of those x values. This would be our answer. If they wanted to know the range, well, similar sort of question, but they're looking for all the y-coordinates. And so in this case, this point has a y-coordinate of -5, this has a y-coordinate of -2, this has a y-coordinate of 6, and these 2 points have y-coordinates of 7. We're going to list all of those, and usually from smallest to biggest. And if there are ever any repeats, we're not going to list them twice. We'll just say that once. And so in this particular case, all the possible y values that we could get out -5 or -2 or 6 or 7. And so that would be the range. You'll also see some questions like this. This says, what's the domain? And here the graph is not just a handful of dots, but connected lines here. And question still asking, what are the x-coordinates that this graph has, that it exists for? And so yes, it exists here at -6, but it also exists in between. Like here, there's part of the graph, and there's a x-coordinate for -3 somewhere, and there's a, the graph exists here at 1, and it exists here at 4. The graph does not exist here when x is 7 or 8 or 9. And so the graph exists between an x of -6 over here and an x of 6 over there. And so in English, we would probably phrase it like this: the x values between -6 and 6. Usually, it's not written out in words like this. It's usually written out as an inequality. And so to describe the numbers between -6 and 6, we would use probably a sandwich inequality, where we have -6 is less than x is less than 6. Less than or equal to, because these are filled in circles. You might see open circles. If there are open circles, then you wouldn't have the or equal to option. When we think about the range, again, it's going to be a bunch of numbers. In this case, it's going to be the y-coordinates, and the smallest that our graph ever reaches is -7. And it looks like the tallest that our graph ever reaches is here at 4. And so what I'll do is I'll describe that set of numbers from -7 up to 4. In English, I would say it like this: the y values between -7 and 4. But in Mathish, and what Khan's going to be looking for is something like this: -7 is less than or equal to y is less than or equal to 4. They might also say, instead of y, they might say that f of x, which is the outputs, are between -7 and 4. And so be on the lookout for that. Anyhow, that's the idea behind domain and range. The key takeaways, things to remember: domain are the x coordinates, the inputs to a function, and range is the y coordinates, the outputs. And that'll be something you'll see throughout Algebra 2 next year also. Let me know if you have any questions, and hope you have a wonderful weekend.